Fact, British and Irish Lions played a home game. Fact, Argentina missing their star players. Fact, Argentina won the game. What does that mean for Australia?
Bench Opinions. 3 idiots with amateur analysis.
Welcome to another episode of Bench Opinions. You've got Dom, Klaus, and myself, Max, giving you our amateur opinions. We've started to see a little bit of back and forth in the comments there, and one guy actually said very accurately, terrible takes. Their podcast description is very accurate because it says 3 dudes with three idiots with amateur opinions. So shout out to that guy. We deliver exactly what we say we will.
Yeah. Or was it Brian 593 or something like that?
No.
Ah, damn. Let's not name and shame.
Yeah,
I think we should.
Or that lady that called me the guy with the Googles. And then told me to wash my mouth out, but she deleted her comment. So regret is a real thing.
The best comment can get a quote in the next episode.
Oh, there you go.
We can read it out.
Look at that.
I don't know if we do swear a lot on this podcast, but we
do.
definitely
do, yeah.
We do.
I don't know about a lot. I mean, I
we don't care about the algorithm and the money.
I listened to an interview yesterday with Danny Dyer, and I'm not anywhere close to swearing as much as that guy, so we're good.
All right. The British and Irish Lions series kicked off sort of in Dublin at the Aviva.
Yeah.
Their first warm-up game against Los Pumas against Argentina. Argentina taking that 28-25?
24.
Klaus, run us through a little bit of a recap of the game.
I mean, the game itself is, I think, interesting for everybody because we're trying to figure out where the Lions are at and what kind of a shape they're going to play. It seems to me, I think to everybody, very obvious that Andy Farrell is going to try and go with like an Irish style attacking rugby, go through lots of phases, that kind of thing. But they've only been together for 2 weeks. So for those combinations to start clicking, especially with it being a superstar-studded team of different nations, is going to take a while. But that's what the warm-up game is for, and that's also what the franchise rugby play also going to be for. But it looks like they've got some sort of shape that they're going for, and it looks like they need 3-4 games to just get into it. Are they going to get into it in time for the Australia Test Series? One would think so, but time will tell.
Yeah. Dom, what do you think so obviously, like Klaus said, they've been together for 2 weeks only. I think a few of the Leinster players also didn't feature, someone like James Lowe, and a few others, the Bath players, who maybe could have also changed the setup. It was a very England heavy starting 15. Yeah. What do you think the benefit is of winning a game ugly as opposed to sort of just setting up some foundations and starting to learn how Andy Farrell wants you to play?
I think you have to look at the way Argentina won the game as well to answer that question. I think it's the most typical Argentinian victory you will see. I mean, those tries they scored were ludicrous. Yeah, and it did seem like sort of Argentina were just really good at sort of trying to soak up whatever the British and Irish Lions were offering. And then what you saw creep through a little bit is probably everything that's an indicative with chucking a bunch of players together. Probably something we'll see from the Barbarians as well. The struggles were sort of at set piece time, sort of people like Finn Smith maybe missing a few passes just because the patterns aren't there yet. I felt that kind of let down the British and Irish Lions a little bit. Argentina also just so clinical there. I think they had over 500 carry meters, which is wild compared to just over 300 from the British and Irish Lions. So I think there's no panic stations. And to answer your question like directly, I just think if you look at all the talk around it as well, I think they understand that this is just a part of getting the pieces, puzzle pieces working. There were some shining lights. I mean, Ellis Genge had an amazing game, which puts him in. I mean, I think that's one of the hardest decisions probably is what your front row will look like going into the first test match, etc. He had an incredible game. And people were raving about the center pairing as well. I think that's really exciting. The Bandiaki having a great game. So let's see. I think it's all par for the course. I think if you look at the game holistically, it's you wouldn't be surprised by anything that kind of happened, and I think you wouldn't have been surprised either if the British and Irish Lions managed to win the game as well.
Yeah. You say they struggled a little bit from set piece. You must mean like obviously after the set piece was set up because they dominated the scrums, which was surprising.
Yeah, the scrum
and
was
the
very
lineouts
dominant.
were also very, very good.
Yeah, but they
struggled under the lineouts.
Yeah.
They actually lost quite a lot of their lineouts.
Yeah,
that was
what
the big problem, is that they
Their rolling maul look good though.
Yeah, but if you don't catch the ball,
listen, a Stormers fan can tell you all about that.
No, I think it's obviously at scrum time they were dominant. That's true. And again, hats off to Ellis Genji, scrummed really well as well. I think what I meant by that is just the structures that you sort of see, the flow of play that you see from a team that's been playing for a long time, including the lineouts. I know the lineouts were quite critical to them not being able to kind of go forward ball, and that's what you want. You know, if you've got your own lineout and you're looking to go forward ball and turn territory into points, then those are the kind of things that you have to make work.
You can definitely see like there's structures that you can see coming through, but it's just the time that they need to click.
Yeah.
The problem I think with the British and Irish Lions in this particular game and why they lost it is more down to, I found, individual performances not stepping up, and it's something that Andy Farrell sort of alluded to. He's disappointed in like some of the individual performances. You know, with throwing in a skew line out, that's got nothing to do with your structures or your systems that you're trying to play. That's got to do with you just not throwing the ball straight.
Yeah.
And you can't afford to do that when you've just scrummed to win that penalty, kick it halfway down the field, you throw it skew, suddenly you're halfway back down the field on your end. And then Argentina obviously capitalizing on those mistakes, you know, loose passes, stuff like that. The reason they have 500 whatever carry meters is because they literally just ran the whole field all the way back at you, you know. That's something that they'll have to tighten up because they can't afford to do that against an Australian team who will be playing with all of their first string players bar injuries and have been playing together for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to a bit of Argentina a bit later. Dom, you both spoke about individual performances and players who did well and players who didn't put their hand up necessarily and may have done their chances a bit of harm. People were quite critical of Marcus Smith at fullback. People weren't too happy with both of the wings. I think Duan more than Freeman, but there could be some question marks there. You could definitely make the case that a Blair Kinghorn at 15 is a safer option than Marcus Smith.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think unfortunately Smith maybe had to bear the brunt of that crazy Argentinian running rugby as well. He was often the last man, particularly for that winning try at the end. He just had absolutely no chance. Although, I mean, he gave it a good college try, but he had no realistic chance. And I saw some critical sort of question marks around his positioning for that kick through.
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit harsh. I mean, it's all about the bounce of the ball as well with that last grubber through at the end there. This is the important thing, though, is that you're starting to see very clear demands from sort of the British and Irish Lions fans saying, for example, look, this is the perfect sign that Finn Russell should be the starting flyer, for example.
Yeah.
So I think you're starting to see a lot of deduction off the back of this performance where people are saying, hey, nice. And honestly, I think the perfect way to kind of kick off a British and Irish Lions tour, because you've got a really good Argentina team, really solid team. I think if you go into that first Western Force game without this, I think maybe it becomes a little bit tougher, because the assessing guys at a test match level becomes so much more difficult if you're playing against an outfit from Perth, you know?
I think it was actually quite nice for the British and Irish Lions that Argentina didn't have all of their, you know, their 6-star players. We're talking like Kramer, Mattia, Lavanini, Carreras.
Yeah.
You know, there's a like
Decent
solid players that are missing. Boffelli,
Yeah.
who's a long-term injury, but like he's also incredible. So they had a weakened Argentina side in the sense that, you know, they were playing like newer guys, but at the same time, the British and Irish Lions had a team that they could sort of face up against and give them enough of a challenge, obviously, because, you know, they beat them, but not get completely slaughtered and sort of put their confidence on the back foot. You know, they were able to play a game and get into it, which I think is good for them growing and going forward.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we give the Lions a little bit of leeway because they've only been together for 2 weeks and they're learning Andy Farrell's system, but they are all players that have come out of a very long streak of rugby, starting with the beginning of the season, going into Six Nations, continuing in their local leagues, Heineken Cup, URC, Premiership, Top 14. So it's people who are definitely
Tired,
but they're also they're not coming out of like 3 months of a break of rugby.
Yeah.
So I think it would be right to demand perfection from them, and I think that's what the British and Irish Lions always preach when you see those videos, whether it's the captains or the coaches speaking. So I don't think it's for any hate that we're going to get of criticizing one player or another. I think even in these warm-up games, you have to be perfect, and you have to put your hand up, and you've got to sort of show what you can do. And if you're lacking now, I think there's some Australians on the other side who would probably be licking their chops.
The critique that goes towards the British and Irish Lions depends on which side it's coming from. If it's coming from your home team, if the British and Irish Lions have lost, the home fans are going to say, yeah, but they've only been together for a very short amount of time and they're still figuring out systems, blah, blah, blah. If it's the opposition that's lost, then it's like, oh, yeah, but it's a star-studded team that's combined of all these different nations and it's like the super team. So you're never going to make everybody happy with that.
Look, I mean, you mentioned some facts, but the fact of the matter is it's the first home test the British and Irish Lions have lost since 1971. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's
first
saying
time
something.
Argentina has beat them.
Yeah.
I didn't realize Argentina's only played them 5 times since like the 70s or something. Or since like the 1930s or something
Really,
like that.
only 5.
Maybe eventually they can put their hands up and try and get their own tour.
Yeah.
Well, apparently there's something right. There's something in discussion because Sansa's contract comes to an end now with British and Irish Lions tour, and I don't want to say too much more because I'm not 100% sure.
The issue that they have though is that if you're going to only do a tour every 4 years, that means you're only playing the Springboks, All Blacks, and Wallabies every 16 years, and I think that's...
Yeah, but I think there was discussion of axing the Australians.
No, maybe I'm just saying, like, generally, like, that's unfortunately the downside to it. But maybe you always make sure that the first kickoff game of a British and Irish Lions tour is against Argentina, albeit on British soil. But I think that's
or even
quite
play
cool.
2 games against Argentina and axe one of the franchise games. That's probably more competitive. I don't know if they'd want that. Sometimes you want a bit of a tune-up game. I don't think Western Force are going to cause the British and Irish Lions too much trouble.
They almost didn't exist.
Yeah.
On Argentina though, very interesting to see. I was reading something this week they were talking about where most of the Argentinian players play, and now, again, as was previous to them, trying to join Super Rugby and trying to get into sort of Curry Cup and trying to, I feel like, put a round peg in a square hole for many years to try and establish something. Most of their players, well, overwhelmingly, all playing in rugby in Europe, and I think the signs are clear. And I'm very interested to see how that translates in the Rugby Championship. The signs are clear that there seems to be a serious side being built there again, off the back of the philosophy of go play your rugby at the highest possible level, and we'll put together a side. So it's going to be interesting to see there. I think only 6 of the players out of the whole squad of 35 play their rugby in Super Rugby Americas.
Yeah,
and 3 of them are debutants. So. Interesting to see that approach, because we talk about it a lot. Do you let your players go? Do you keep them?
It's come into with what Jake White has said. It's the whole thing. The whole thing has opened up again about enticing Springboks to come play back home, and the CEO of SA Rugby has come out and said it's not feasible because we're saving money sending our players overseas.
And we need to box clever,
because we can't pay those salaries. Let's talk about the Aviva, sold out. It's interesting to see how the home nations sort of have to switch and become fans of players that they usually hated, and it was actually quite nice to see that. I think everyone who came on for the British and Irish Lions got a massive ovation, whether they were English, Scottish, or Irish, or Welsh.
Welsh, yeah.
So, do you think
strange concept?
Do you think let's just for argument's sake, could you see yourself cheering for an Australian that loudly if we'd make one for the Southern Hemisphere team?
Yes.
Not a fuck.
Yes. 100%. Because how often do we talk about North versus South?
No.
Hemisphere teams?
It's true.
We're like, I'd rather back in Australia than in England.
So yeah.
No,
but my problem.
Can't do it.
You don't have a
Thank
sister.
God you're an only child.
Yeah.
I think so. I'd have no problem cheering on a New Zealander.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with the Australians though. It's literally it's what I think, and I think the dislike or the hatred is not as strong between South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand as it is between, for example, a Scotland and an England, or an Ireland and an England.
Yeah.
Because there is historically based hatred.
Generally, anyone in England.
And for them to come together, I mean, on the one hand, it's great, what sport can do. But on the other hand, I find it incredibly challenging. But you do see it in some of the social media comments when some of the fans go at each other, and the one dude, when there's a few Irish players who don't play well or a few Scots who don't play well, they do pick out their nationality and say, oh, we don't need these useless Scots in our team, or those bloody Irish aren't good enough. You
know what I thought was really interesting to see is Owen Farrell was a pundit on the weekend, and the broadcasters showed his face on the big screen in the stadium.
Got massive
and he got
ovation.
massive applause. And he actually came out and said, this was before the game, that he really, really struggles because he is that pantomime villain in all things England rugby, and he gets booed wherever he goes. And he says, like, I think it might have played a role in as to why he sort of stepped back from playing for England. Because he just couldn't. He was like, this is too much, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as the camera went onto him, you saw him kind of like
clench up a little bit,
and grimace, and when that applause came, you just saw like him melt. Yeah. It was actually quite nice to see. Saw him cry on the telly.
We saw you cry on the telly. This is a bit of a hot take, but I don't feel the need. I think there's a lot of the whole British Irish Lions thing is trying to galvanize people, this idea to try and beat the all-powerful Southern Hemisphere. And I don't feel the need as a Springbok fan to have to put myself together with Australia and New Zealand to now go up north and be like, we're dominant. And I think that's why I cannot put my head into the idea of supporting the whatever this collection of players would be if South Africa, Australia, New Zealand were to make a team.
I don't think one would have to do exactly the reverse, where we'd like tour Scotland, Ireland, or England, or Wales every now and then. But what would be interesting from it's a very American way of thinking about it, but
putting Irish Lions,
putting against a best of the North versus a best of the South. But there's just no space on the rugby calendar. There's so much rugby that's played already. But that would be like an all-star game.
You could do it every 4 years as like a exhibition match kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't take it seriously because then the players have only been together for 2 weeks. All of that shit. So
let's quickly just have a few more words on Argentina and their rugby championship hopes this season. Do they have a chance to contend, or are they just going to fight for second or third again, or fourth?
I can't see them winning it, but I could see them contending for second.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they beat South Africa last year, they beat Australia last year, and they beat New Zealand last year. So they can definitely beat any team on their day.
Whether they keep their discipline, I guess. Which team they can put on the field.
I think if they're going to win it, this is kind of the phase between World Cups where they're most likely to do it. I think because a lot of the teams are kind of recycling players, trying to find combinations. I see the Springboks probably changing quite a lot, and could cause some vulnerabilities maybe. Whereas the Argentinian set of players, I don't know if they have the turnover that some of the other teams have. And unfortunately, I think Australia are going to be a little bit of, not the whipping boys, but I think they're going to struggle to try and get any higher than last. And I think the one thing I will say, though, is I hope, and I'm sure Joe Schmidt was watching, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the way Argentina won that game on Friday for Australia as well. And from what I've been reading about sort of the things that people like George Gregan have been saying is that Australia's combinations are maybe lacking, but they do have a lot of individuals in the backline, for example, that can really hurt you. And I would say that if they can try and look at that blueprint from that Argentina victory to a certain degree and copy that, there might be something in it for them, at least against the British and Irish Lions.
Don't you think that Australia's prep into going into the Rugby Championship is going to be better than ours, for example, because they were going to be playing against the British and Irish Lions in a 3-test series at a much higher level than us playing against Georgia and Italy?
Yeah. So let's get into the Australians. They're a bit of an unknown factor almost because they were struggling last year. They had a semi-decent
end
of year tour, and you saw a few of the things that Joe Schmidt maybe is trying to integrate. He's a great coach, and that's why they're going into this British and Irish Lions series maybe a little bit unknown, because you're not sure how far they've gotten in the meantime. They're playing Fiji. I believe it's next weekend, not this weekend, and that'll probably give you a bit more insight into how they're playing right now. I don't know if it's false optimism, but people are giving Australia a decent chance in this British and Irish Lions series. Just because I think the occasion is so big that they might get tuned up for it. Taking the Rugby Championship out of it for now, what do you think they took out of the game between Argentina and the British and Irish Lions this weekend?
Again, the only thing you'll be able to take out of it is like potential structures and systems that they'll play. You're not going to be able to ascertain where they are at in terms of how well they'll be able to execute those plans, because it's just too soon to tell.
Do you think Australia will look at Andy Farrell's Island footage?
Oh, for sure.
Exclusively to prepare for this and just say, let's because by all intents and purposes, that is what he's going to build this on, this British and Irish Lions team on, and that's all they can go off.
Yeah, I think they'll spend a lot of time watching Argentina and the things that Argentina did right, for sure, in the game against the British and Irish Lions. I think how devastating they were as soon as play broke up a little bit. Obviously, it's difficult to manufacture those kind of moments in a game, obviously, but I think the reality is with the way these teams are chucked together and these players are chucked together, the chances are that there will be breaks in play and a little bit of chaos, albeit diminished maybe by the time they play Australia. But I think those are the things you kind of have to look at and make your players understand that, hey, in those moments, that's where you can hurt them the most, and that's how you can exploit it. I think there will be major concerns. The fact that the scrum is already operating as well as it did, is going to be something that maybe rings a few alarm bells. Again, the unknown factor of Australia, I have no idea. I don't think Australia knows what to expect from their pack going into this British and Irish Lions tour. But I think that's going to be the thing. It's like, look at what Argentina did well, and then maybe look at the individuals. So watch back Bath footage of Finn Russell, and at least try and ascertain, okay, what are the reflex actions of the individual stars in this team? What are the patterns that they look to exploit? I think that's the only way you can go about it.
Yeah,
I agree with Tom. I think you need to look at the things that you can exploit as an attacking team, because somebody in the comments would have to correct me, because I've never played.
And they will.
Because I've never played rugby. We've all never really played rugby. We just really enjoyed it. You played one game where you got knocked out, and you played another game where you got knocked out.
I played for a few months.
Okay.
At the highest level.
At
the highest level of third string.
Under 13s.
Under 13s. I would assume that training and adapting a new style of defense is more difficult to sort of nail on than figuring out how to have a good attacking structure. And so I think that's going to be the weak point in the British and Irish Lions armor. And so for Australia, if they can exploit that with counterattacks the way that Argentina did, I think that's going to be the best chance of scoring some points.
Right.
But I think they're in deep shit. Either way, to be honest, I think it's good for the whole tour, for the Australians, and as well as the British and Irish Lions, to talk about and aspire to be maybe closer than it is. Everyone wants a really good and tight. I mean, no one wants the British and Irish Lions to go there and win each test match by 20 points plus, which I don't think they're going to do. But I think we're stuck in this little loop of like, ooh, it's going to be exciting, and everyone wants it to be exciting, and maybe talking up the Australians. That's kind of my feeling of it.
Well, listen,
it is a home game, right?
Yeah, Dom's 0 for 1 with his predictions with the Bulls. So let's go into some. Got close. Let's go into some predictions. I'm going to go for 2-1 Lions, but I think the Australians are going to take one.
How are they going to take one in the last game?
No, I think it'll go to the last game.
Okay,
yeah.
Because that's interesting, right? Because
in
the last game, it's like, okay, let's chuck in the new guys.
Yeah.
I also see you're going 2-1, and I see Australia winning the first one.
All right.
3-zip. 3-zip to the British and Irish Lions.
Watch the British and Irish Lions.
Unfortunately.
Quickly, just before we finish, some words on the Springboks versus the Barbarians this weekend. Anything you guys want to see? Any combinations or new players you want to see or are excited about?
Vincent Chuka. Want to see him on the field starting.
Yeah.
Sia, I think, can take a break.
Does Willie Does this count towards Villiers' caps if he plays?
Yeah, it's an international test.
So this is something we should play him for so that he can get to 100.
I might have to correct you there. I don't think it does.
Oh, it does not.
I don't think it does. No, it's this. The Barbarians game is never an official test match.
Oh.
The reason I know why is because Brown came out saying, for us, we're treating it as a test match.
Right.
So I think I don't know if you would say that if he's telling me that he's treating a test match like a test match, I'd be a bit fucking concerned. But I think. No, I don't think, unfortunately, it counts. Okay. I think it might. Who knows? I could see him starting. Also, just being at home and getting a run out. It's a weird game. I mean, I'm relatively excited for it because for me, it's more the sort of symbolic start of the Springboks back out in green and gold and playing some rugby again. But it is a bit of a strange.
It is strange. It always depends how the Barbarians rock up. There's been Barbarians teams in the past who've really gelled quickly because they only have a week together. Never mind 2 weeks. So. But they do usually bring together an interesting star-studded mix of players.
Yeah, and they toss the ball around. That's quite exciting.
I'm quite excited to see Q and Horn.
Right,
if you can make it to 15. Vandenberg at 9. I think that would be quite interesting. Sasha, I think at 10, get him back into the Springbok squad. Get him.
I think maybe you'll see someone like Ntlabahanya.
He's definitely starting.
Yeah,
100% he's starting.
That would be great to get him to start. I mean, he definitely deserves it for the work he's put in at the Lions.
I think you'll see Jean-Luc Dupria.
Yeah,
there's been some really good banter as well on X with the Barbarians page.
Good.
With Tony Brown saying, what did he say? He said, yeah, we're going to treat this as a test match. And the picture was of Oxen and Tlabakanya next to each other. And then the Barbarians account tagged them and was like, oh, so we're contesting the scrums? Question mark. So yeah, it's going to be fun. And I think the fact that that's treated like an exhibition match is kind of, I think, always bodes well for like, they're generally quite high scoring.
Yeah.
And, but I think Rassie and the coaches it's go time. I think they see this as a very important part of their plans.
I saw a headline that said that they were taken to a dark place by Rassie in the lead up to this. I assume whether it's mentally or physically, the prep for the season's going to be big.
I saw Coach Don, the front row coach, the scrummaging coach, putting the guys through their paces, and it looked incredibly difficult. And shit. So yeah, I think Colby came out as well and said that this is the toughest camp he's ever been a part of.
Okay, very interesting. Let's see.
I heard a report of them saying that Rassie is trying to, because in 2019 we had this like heavy defense, kick the ball, defend, and then sort of capitalize off of that. Then in 2023 it was more of this like running style kind of rugby, experimenting with a whole bunch of different things. Then in 2024, and because everybody's putting so much pressure on like a bomb squad type thing, it's like you just using big guys and you brute force and whatnot. Rassie in combination with Felix Jones, in combination with Tony Brown, is starting to shift his mindset more towards we're going to be the fittest team that ever existed. Excuse me, and then we're just going to run circles. That's sort of the gameplay he wants to go with.
What was it? Camp Stahldraht there back in the early 2000s.
Get them to strip. Yeah. In the water you go.
Put them through some South African military training.
Interesting you say that, because this week there's been a lot of talk about Jacques Nienaber and what his future holds for him.
True.
And currently he's being tipped to come back to the Springboks for the next World Cup. They're saying long term, that's kind of the long term plan. He might find another interim role and then come back. So that's also interesting with you saying they're looking to shift their rugby to then get Nienaber in on the defensive side again. Could be quite formidable, but it's interesting to watch that, particularly because we were surprised on this couch, or we spoke about being surprised that Nienaber was not the head coach of Leinster. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where it could be quite an interesting Trojan horse tactic between Rassie and Jacques, so to send him right into the Irish setup. And then bring him back for the next World Cup.
Yeah, maybe final bit of online gossip that's been going around on Jake White. It seems like there's a little bit of a player mutiny almost. Players demanding that he steps down. This is all just in the news. I think from what we discussed actually on the show, it seems like a sort of natural progression if you talk about your players like that after a final loss. Yep. Let's see.
So look, at the end of the day, let's be real. He's had 3 good attempts at it, hasn't won it. I think I think whether he says what he says or not, I think it's probably almost a decent enforced rethink by the Bulls franchise to see where they go from here. I think losing 3 finals in a row is not going to be easy, or at least under Jake White, him losing 3 finals he's been to. So the most thing I'm excited by is, this is something we touched on last week as well, is getting good coaches back into South Africa. Is that Ackerman is currently the bookies' favorite to come in and take over. I think would be a brilliant signing for the Bulls, but also for South African rugby.
South Africa,
Yeah. All right, I think that wraps it up for this week.
Let us know what you think the results are going to be for the Australia-British Irish Lions tour.
The nice thing about our listeners is that they will let us know a lot of things in the comments.
Or maybe they
positive or negative.
Maybe they could let us know what they think the tournament's going to
regardless of why you're listening, whether you hate us or love us. We appreciate you nonetheless. And we hope you tune in next week again. Thanks for listening.
Goodbye and farewell.
Cheers.